It's been a wild week since the Arch commitment, and Texas has added player after player, doubling our class size in just a few days. Sark and the gang are on a heater right now, so let's check in with the owner of Inside Texas, Eric Nalin, and make sense of this giant boost in recruiting. Make sure to head over to InsideTexas.com today so you can stay up to date on all the recruiting battles that are still taking place. Let's recap the new names added to the class, but more importantly, let's cover the major targets still left on the board. Without further ado, let's get into it. This past week has been a whirlwind, so let's recap. Arch commits on June 23rd. June 25th, four-star inside linebacker Leona Lafau commits. Then we had a big day on the 26th, pulling in 5 recruits. Four-star receiver Jonah Wilson, 3-star interior offensive lineman Connor Stroh out of Frisco, 3-star interior offensive lineman Andre Kojo out of Arlington, 4-star offensive lineman Jaden Chapman out of Parker Heights, and then we flipped a TCU commit and 3-star offensive tackle Trevor Gooseby out of Melissa. The next day, June 27th, we landed the number 4 safety in the nation in Derek Williams out of New Iberia, Louisiana. On June 28th, we flipped 3-star Oklahoma State commit Billy Walton from South Oak Cliff. And on June 29th, the Longhorns landed the number 1 receiver in Texas in DeSoto's Jonte Cook. And we aren't done yet. All right, Eric, let's hit the remaining targets starting with offense. Our top priority at running back is Florida's Cedric Baxter. So how are things looking there? And also, what's his timeline to announce?
Cedric Baxter is going to be one that I think the whole country is paying attention to going into his decision in August. At least that's what his set decision timeline is, August 10th right now. Those things can always change rather quickly. Texas has a lot of momentum in this one. You've got Tashard Choice that's had that relationship built going back to when he was coaching at Georgia Tech. Might prove to be one of Steve Sarkisian's best hires of all time. And then, of course, Arch Manning helps. There's a credibility boost with Arch Manning selecting Texas. But I think the school just kind of sets up to him. On top of the school kind of profiling to him, you've also got Bijan Robinson, who's pretty much the best ambassador you could possibly have for a running back like Cedric Baxter. There's a lot of things that are implied with being Bijan on campus that the staff doesn't even have to sell. You don't have to point out there's a green Lamborghini right there, but also, the usage within the offense as well. The guy's a really all around talented running back that you could feature a whole offense around. And another selling point they have is Sark isn't able to run his ideal offense just yet because they haven't had the offensive line. He could sell that offensive line to Baxter too. So this just really sets up well to pull a coup out of the Southeast.
We got our wide receiver number 1 in Jonte Cook and Jonah Wilson in the fold as well. So who are the big names that are still left on the board at receiver?
At wide receiver, they couldn't be in a better position. You've got Jonte Cook, the best wide receiver in the state. I love how polished he is, but he's also a really good athlete, just really knows how to play the position. Kid knows how to get open. I think he had 39 or 38 receptions last year, and 19 of them went for touchdowns. A lot of those on deep balls. He really knows how to go up and get it, adjust. Kind of like Garrett Wilson, I would say. Not quite like Garrett when it comes to elevating, but he really has great timing when the ball's in the air and he attacks it. So he's going to come in and play all 3 positions at wide receiver. And you got Jonah Wilson, more of an X, playing in the boundary, but he's got speed, smooth, can accelerate. They're playing with leverage right now. They can wait on Michael Harrison Pilot, who wants to take his remaining official visits in September. The thing there is that the Harrison Pilot and his family have always wanted to see Texas actually put some wins together. So I think right now he feels comfortable committing to Texas, but they do want to go through their process and see some improvement on the field. September will be that opportunity. Jalen Hale, that's been an interesting recruitment the whole time. He's never truly been interested in Texas. He's visited a couple times. He's been respectful to the staff and shown interest, but it's always been Georgia or Ohio State or, even A&M there for a minute, LSU at the beginning. But right now, Texas is getting momentum there. Of course, again, there's the Arch effect right there. We kind of didn't think that they would take Jonah Wilson and Jalen Hale just because they're up against it with numbers, but they really like Hale, and I think he's too good to pass up, especially after he started running those 10-600s this year. Jaden Greathouse, he seems like he wants to go to Notre Dame, but he keeps pushing his timeline back. And so that keeps allowing the staff to get their foot in the door. I love how he runs his recruitment. He kind of keeps to himself, and he'll just show up on campus for a visit. And we'll find out 3 days later. There's something about Texas that really keeps his attention, though. And, him pushing back his timeline makes a lot of sense. Marcus Freeman is anything but a proven head coach. The only detail we have on him is the second half collapse in the bowl game. I think he might want a little proof of concept up there in South Bend. And Sark went 5-7 last year. So if Texas starts winning, then I think they're going to make a move for him.
And what's the word on Petaway? Is he at OU lean right now?
We talk all the time about guys that profile to Texas, and then there's the counter to that is sometimes guys just want a smaller environment. I've seen that a lot of times. One wide receiver that came to mind was Katie Cannon, being from Mount Pleasant, wanted the smaller environment of a Baylor. Jaquays Petaway, even though he's in Houston, Langer Creek, I think he might want to be in that smaller environment as well. And Norman sets up well. They're recruiting him to be the man. Jackson Arnold, of course, is a very good quarterback who's making waves right now on Twitter, and they're the lead 11. So they've got a quarterback to sell. Levy's got an offense to sell, and a success at Ole Miss. So I think he's kind of buying into OU right now, which is it's a bit unfortunate. He's probably the second best wide receiver in the state, I would say, but you can't get them all.
And we already have 2 tight ends in the class, so we're likely done there. But I am hearing some talk of USC commit Deuce Robinson out of Arizona. So is there anything to that?
Yeah, I'm not buying into the Deuce Robinson hype. I told myself if they land Arch Manning or when they land Arch Manning, that I'm going to drive home back to Texas through Phoenix just to try to catch up with him. And so I'm going to try to do that in late July or August because I want to see it in his eyes and hear it in his voice of how he feels about Texas. He has visited last summer, but obviously they have to get him to campus again. I'm sure they're trying for the last week of July. He's a fantastic athlete at tight end. I mean, you watch him run routes, and he looks like Colin Johnson instead of a tight end. So he's going to be stellar. If he goes to Lincoln Riley, that would kind of make some sense just because of the success he's had with that type of player. But, I've heard Jeff Banks is the most dogged recruiter that people have ever been around. And, that coupled with Arch and the quarterback situation and the potential to play baseball, he's a good baseball player. Maybe we see twists and turns in recruiting all the time. Maybe one lies ahead for that recruitment.
Offensive line had a large, highly ranked class last year, and we already had 4 more linemen commit on the 26th. So are we looking to add any more top names to that group, maybe higher end tackle bodies?
When I left the video last week, I said that we might have to come back and revisit how the official visits went. I had an idea a couple offensive linemen would commit. I had no idea that the rest of it would follow like this avalanche, but I had a good idea. Some guy, they were in a good position with those offensive linemen for sure. So now they're playing with house money. They can sit around and play the waiting game and pick the best Kyle Flood, Vitruvian man out there. And that would be the biggest tackle body that he can find. He's going to find somebody that's giant and can move their feet. They just offered Miles McVay. I messaged with him. He's going to try he's thinking about visiting at the end of July. Of course, they're still after Zalant's hurt. That's going to be tough getting him out of LSU. Peyton Kirkland, there's a lot of talk about OU right now, but he might visit at the end of July. That he almost visited right before the dead period. So he's going to find somebody. Kyle Flood is too good to not unearth one of those Cameron Williams from a year ago sort of players. It'll be real interesting if McVay visits. You just watch a couple clips and I just laughed. I said, yeah, that's a Kyle Flood guy.
And let's look at defense right now. And defense needs a talent infusion, so let's see who can kind of be the difference maker there. Starting with edge, who are the names we need to look out for?
Yeah, you're right. They're going to have to get the defensive pieces in place that they have similarly on offense. I feel confident that Sarkisian's going to be around long enough to get time to figure out the defense. And I think Pete Kwiatkowski's going to have a little bit of time too, but they do have to get those right pieces. And Kwiatkowski, you've detailed his defense in the past. It kind of starts with those edge players. He finds those guys that can play the run, that can box in, but also get after the quarterback. And the guys he's after right now profile to those fits. And you got Braylon Shelby, Colton Vosick, Cecilia Kana, Hunter Osborne. They're going to get 2 of those guys. I feel pretty good about. Which 2 remains to be seen. I think they're in a good spot for Braylon Shelby. Texas, USC. UT has the proximity advantage. If that kid lived in Southern California, you would chalk him up to USC. He does like Southern Cal, but I think that Texas is going to end up winning that one out. That one could go down relatively soon. I've heard that he's going home to deliberate with the family. UT feels good about it. They don't feel great about it like they do with some other players. Osborne is going to be, that's probably going to be Texas versus Clemson. Pretty interesting battles with Texas, Clemson this year. Clemson got him on Ian Reed tool, but now Texas might be able to get a little retribution there. To me, they just need to get one of those guys. I always like getting the nearby player if all things else are equal. And I think Vosick does have some interesting things about his game where he's good with his hands. He knows how to pass rush, and he's going to fill out a lot. Hunter Osborne's maybe a little bit bigger right now, and he's a good player. I think they're going to be similar style players long term. Just get one of them, and then Akana is going to be real interesting. That's going to give us something to pay attention to in October. He's going to take an official visit later in the fall. I don't really have him on watch right now. Texas just signed his buddy Leona Lafau, and his sister just transferred to Texas to play volleyball. Makes a lot of sense for him to come visit in the fall and check things out.
There's also a ton of names at interior defensive line. First, what's the status on David Hicks, and who else is high on the board?
Well, I mean, it's nice to be able to credibly talk about David Hicks. There was times where you didn't think it was ever going to be worth our time to do that. Texas is going to have to play the long game there. They're going to have to win on the field. That's first and foremost. But I think it sets up pretty well for UT, to be honest. If they do win and the defense does play improved football, then you're going to go up against A&M, and A&M isn't going to have the playing time available that UT will. The depth chart up top is about to thin at defensive tackle. He'd come in and play immediately. It's a long game. Don't get too excited about it right now, but at least UT is in that one. Sadir Mitchell is one that has a chance to wrap up this summer, maybe July. Defensive tackle out of New Jersey. Not a lot of times UT will go there, but obviously Kyle Flood has some ties there. This looks like Texas versus Georgia. Maybe A&M is in it as well. He's a big priority. They're going to, like I said, they're going to lose guys like Keandre Coburn, perhaps Tavondre Sweat. Maybe some other guys leave as well. So he would be able to play early if he picks Texas. So we're watching that one. He's much better than his rating. Forget that. Just look how big he is and how well he moves his feet. You can see why Georgia offered him. The guy I really like is Terrence Green. It doesn't look like it right now, but he's going to be 315 pounds. And so he is going to be that over the ball sort of nose tackle that they're looking for right now. It might just take a year or two to get there. Lots of untapped potential there. He's not a super twitchy guy, but he's long, he's strong. He plays with good leverage. He's basically, he would be an elite left tackle. But you sandwich that down in the interior and play with good pad level, and he's going to be a load to handle. There's a group of three that we're also paying attention to. Marcus Deal, obviously. I think Deal is a much better offensive line prospect than he is defensive line prospect. Obviously, he could play D tackle in college. There's no question about that. But I think he's an elite offensive lineman. It doesn't necessarily translate. Whereas Terrence Green, you're like, all right, that's an elite offensive lineman and a really good defensive tackle. Jaron Woods at LaGrange, I think, is very similar in that. Deal, I think there's a bit of a drop off between how good he is on offense and defense. That's not to say he's not a good player. There's also Samunu Pepe from Atascocita. He's a giant, mobile nose tackle. I think he's still in the mix, but I'm not sure that they're going to go after him super hard. And Michael Gardner from Arizona, they would have a good chance to get him. I just think that he's similar to some of the guys they looked at last summer, where they like him, but do they love him? It's always about, if you take him, you're sacrificing the chance to get somebody else down the road. How do the numbers work out? That's always a tension that coaches have to figure out when dealing with class numbers. I think they're going to start reaching out further nationally. They've offered some new guys recently. I need to get a better feel for them. I think a couple guys might show up in July. That'll be an interesting time to see who the new targets are. Right now, there's this huge bounce they're getting from Arch. They're taking phone calls in from guys they never thought they'd hear from. And so we're going to see that July visit week is going to tell us a lot about who the new targets are that we're going to be covering going into the fall.
And inside linebacker is a major need, and Choate the GOAT is already turning that around with 2 awesome commits already. But the top linebacker in the nation just released a top 2 of Texas and A&M. So what is the latest intel on Anthony Hill?
Yeah, Choate the GOAT, man. That's it's one of the better nicknames. It's kind of funny. It's somewhat hyperbolic because of he struggled last year, and some of the criticism he received might have been deserved. But I think every coach needs a little bit of time to get his players. And last year there were no linebackers in state. This year there's a lot better options, and so he's doing well. Samaje Burrell, obviously Leona Lafau from Hawaii, and now Anthony Hill is kind of the prize that everybody's talking about. Texas made a huge move for Hill. The text I got right before we came on air is, they're looking really good for Malik Muhammad and Anthony Hill. There's a lot of optimism there. Those guys do want to play together. I think they're going to end up getting him, but they're going to have to weather that official visit very late in July before Anthony Hill goes home to sleep on it for a while and figure out his school before the season starts. He's probably on an August timeline. To me, UT is a team to beat. The guys I work with, they're hearing the same thing. Keep hammering away, man.
Yeah, that'll be the marquee head-to-head with A&M. It should be fun. And we have another linebacker to be excited about in Darian Gillette. And he can be both an off-ball linebacker and also come off the edge, kind of mixed skill set. So how are things progressing in that recruitment?
I think Choate's done a really good job of selling him on playing at Texas. I think everybody knows, if you watch the tape, he's very raw at playing off the ball. But as an athlete, you just pin his ears back and get after the quarterback. He can do that while Choate is teaching them the nuances of the position. I think that's a very smart pitch, and I think it works well when you have somebody like DeMarvion Overshown who's going to play more off the edge this year. I'm sure Choate has shown Gillette, some images of spring ball, some video of spring ball of DeMarvion doing that. So there's some video evidence of what they plan to do with him. Texas, to me, again, is a team to beat in this one. I think that that one's going to wrap up sooner than Anthony Hill. Texas has been on them very hard. They've had a very coherent pitch throughout. The school sets up well for him. I think he's been feeling Texas since mid to late spring above everyone else. But got to get him over the line. I think that could happen in the next week or two.
Finally, we arrive at the secondary. Who are the key corner targets?
Well, Texas is in great shape for three high-profile corners. That's Jordan Matthews, Toviano, and Malik Muhammad. The number coming in, I think, was two. They took quite a few last year, but they like corners that can move around too, and two of those guys can. Malik Muhammad's going to stay at corner his whole career. There's no doubt about it to me. But Toviano and Matthews can play star, which is nickel or maybe even field safety. So they're not going to pass on top shelf covered talent. To me, they're in great shape with all of them. It might not seem that way with Toviano. They've led twice for him. The thing with Toviano is you want to be in the right place when he's ready to make his decision. It's okay if you're lagging a little bit. It's kind of like, hitting afterburners like the horse in the Kentucky Derby this year. You just want to time that run right. And I think the staff is going to have a good feel for that. Matthews, to me, UT's been the team to beat for a while. I know he's picked up some big offers. The one school that we're paying attention to is Alabama. If he waits until the beginning of the season to make a decision, he could see Alabama that first week and then see Alabama that second week when he visits UT. He also might be at Texas for the July barbecue. So we're watching his timeline. I know they're pushing hard. Terry Joseph has been recruiting him harder than anybody for the longest. A lot of times that works out. And so, obviously with Joseph, his ties in Louisiana, I think he's kind of gets undersold. He's played the point man on the Derek Williams recruitment. He was an assist on Arch Manning. He helps out anything in Louisiana. He's got the good pulse of that one. LSU, even though his dad went to LSU, I don't think that they're a factor at all. So they're in great shape with Matthews. And then Malik Muhammad. I think Muhammad could make a decision relatively soon. And I think UT is the team to beat. Written a lot about how the relationships he's got at the school. His cousin Amina signed with Vic Schaefer to play basketball last year. Billy Walton, his cousin, another cousin, just committed to Texas the other day. There are other cousins that attend UT right now. His uncle has attended a UT. I mean, that's a burnt orange family pretty much, and I'd be pretty surprised if he ended up anywhere other than Texas.
We already landed a top safety in Derek Williams. Is there anyone else we should be aware of at the safety position?
I think they're done at safety, to be honest. I mean, they're going to try for Caleb Downs because he's elite. But, they don't want to load up on safety bodies. They prefer guys that are iffy corners that have the temperament and mentality to move around, smart corners that they know are going to tackle. And then, you grow those guys and they still have that they retain that coverage ability. You're not going to get as easily exploited. The concepts in football quite well. A lot of times the best wide receiver is the slot. Guy better be able to cover him. They don't want a lot of safeties. They're going to try to get the best safety they can. Last year, they got Brian Allen, who's fantastic. This year, they got Derek Williams, who's fantastic. They would only take another guy if he was elite. I think they're done at safety, and, fantastic job. I knew that Texas was in that recruitment. Seeing Tony Mitchell commit to Alabama put a big smile on my face, and I'm sure Texas got an even bigger smile on its face. That's collective faces in the staffing room. They just got to hold on to him, and I think they will. That kid profiles well to the school. He visited numerous times. A lot of times on the radar, we'd only find out about later. And so, Terry Joseph, Blake Gideon, they pulled a coup right there. Brian Kelly, hardest hit.
And I wanted to ask you about the overall recruitment strategy. You hear the we're just filling up on bread argument due to signing developmental guys. So were the coaches just establishing their floor on early targets and now they're going to go after the quote unquote bigger names?
Yeah, I mean, I picked up on some of that sentiment from the stargazers in the fan base. They care about nothing but stars. They'll take a crappy player that's overrated over one that's got tons of potential. It's kind of funny. They don't watch any tape. They just click the database and that's the guy they want no matter what. Kyle Flood got his priorities in the class. Those are the guys that he'd been after for a very long time. And, he was early on those players. He was early on Stroh, early on Kojo when he arrived. Kojo's only 16. Let's rate these guys by their age of when they get to campus. He's going to be one of the best 16-year-old offensive linemen in the country. Who cares what grade he's in? I like the class. Jaden Chapman, he's very early on that offer. I mean, the stargazers like him because he's a 4-star, so he gets a free pass, but he's doing the same type of evaluation there. The roster doesn't need immediate help because they're not going to find any freshmen in the country that are going to jump the previous class they just signed. So you want those guys that have developmental curves. None of these guys are anywhere close to playing their best football. So I really like what they've done. And now you're right. This sets them up to, the more the class fills up, the more they can focus on those elite players. There's going to be new names that pop up. Their phone's ringing off the hook from people that hadn't returned their phone calls in a long time. So we're going to see new names pop up. There's going to be some crazy storylines right now that I have no clue about. The last 10 remaining targets that they go after are all going to meet the stargazers' expectations.
Exciting times on the 40 acres. And Eric, please let the viewers know where they can stay up to date on all the crazy recruiting news during this wild cycle.
Yeah, hopefully they already know to find us at InsideTexas.com. I think we've made quite the name for ourselves over the years, and then especially with the Arch coverage, we dominated not just our market but the entire country. We cover the team better than anybody else, in my view. And come check us out. $1 for 4 months. That promotion is going to go away in the next couple of days, so take advantage of it.
And that's a wrap on Eric Nalin. Sign up for Inside Texas, and you can receive the breaking news in real time. Thanks for hanging out. Watch some more of my videos here. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and share if you want to support quality Texas content. As always, book on.